So flow triggers. So we've gone through the flow cycle with the idea of struggle, release, flow, and recovery. So let's take a little bit of time in terms of how we're helping people understand what these flow triggers are. I know that in the challenge, we have ways that people can access flow through movement, through connecting with somebody, these are all examples of what can allow people, but let's give a little bit more insight to some of the other flow triggers that are out there. So Damon, I'm gonna let you kind of run this one through with everybody. And so let's talk with that first one.
So clear goals, right? I mean, flow follows focus. And when we're very intentional and clear about what our goals are, and when I say goals, I actually mean more like to-do lists. What do you need to get done in a specific day? Write these things down the night before, wake up in the morning, you've got your list, you've got your focus. You're not wasting a lot of precious brain energy trying to figure out what it is that you need to do. So the clearer, the more specific the goals, somewhere around 5 to 8 things a day is kind of where we want to max out, the better. And our challenge here is, you're going to have specific, 10 minutes a day of some specific goals. But this is something to be thinking about in terms of how you want to trigger at work, at home, and everywhere else in your life.
Great. Autonomy.
What can you do without needing anyone else? Is to ask permission, to ask help, to ask how to do it. So that the more you can kind of create autonomy in your own life, the less you're going to be kind of pulled out of that phase of the cycle of flow. So thinking about the things that you're capable of accomplishing and really kind of playing to your strengths and honing in on those is a great flow trigger.
Well, I think the other part of me for autonomy is being in control of your own environment. And one of the things that I've seen is when people don't feel like they are in control or they feel helpless, that's the number one cause of stress in our body. So, again, the 30-day flow challenge is helping people to recognize that they have a lot more control over their choices, over their environment than they think they do in terms of how they respond. I mean, they may not be in control of what's happening, but they do have control of how they respond. And I think, to me, that's a big part of autonomy as well.
That's great. Well, like I said earlier, flow follows focus. So whatever it is that we're focusing on, that's going to, our brain is going to be interested in that. And if it's something that is in line with our values and in line with the direction that we want to go, all the better. So obviously this one can slide off the rails as well and turn into a blocker if we're focusing on the things that, make us feel fight, flight, or freeze, or they're telling kind of old stories that limit us. So focus for sure, but focusing on the right things to cultivate the conditions to get us moving in the direction that we want to go is a great trigger. If you were to drive to work and you take the same route every single day, and if one day on Friday you just said, you know what, I'm going to take a different route, your brain lights up in a way that it wouldn't doing the old, same old, same old. So novelty is a really powerful flow trigger. And, we encourage you to sort of look at your life, look at things that you could potentially do a little bit different. There are small examples like driving to work, on a different route, eating with your opposite hand. But there are also ones that are maybe a little bit more fundamental and foundational around just seeing situations through a different lens. There are some mornings I wake up and, my intention is to show up feeling calm that day. And I might be in a chaotic situation, but I actually respond through a calm nervous system. Well, that not only helps to mitigate, the reaction that I might have had otherwise, it's also novel. So we're almost playing the game inside the game by bringing that type of novelty to our day-to-day lives. And sure enough, that is a massive flow trigger when we're able to do that.
I think the novelty one, I know that dealing with work and trauma is in order to kind of get unstuck, you got to pursue novel things, but in that you have to feel safe in doing it. And that's why that psychological safety is also pretty important. So that's right. Great. Active listening.
It's a human tendency when someone is speaking to already start to formulate what it is that you're going to say next. And so before they're even done speaking, you're already listening to yourself. So active listening, number one, starts with holding space for others, allowing a person to say their piece and doing your best to, be aware that, these thoughts are popping up in your head, but that you're really actively turning out and paying attention. It's also active listening, something that we do within our own selves. So, a lot of times, a thought or a feeling will come up and we just sort of suddenly we go 1,000 miles an hour, kind of snowball effect off of whatever that prompt or that thought was. Sometimes it's really more beneficial just to pay attention to what we're feeling. And throughout our program, you're going to be knowing more about, how to listen to your body and the different sensations that it has, how to place and define different emotions that are going on. So active listening, sure, out in the world, but also, I think the number one thing in this program is that we want you to feel more connected to yourself. And so active listening in this case is turn the camera around and just allow yourself to pay attention.
Which kind of leads into the deep embodiment.
Yeah, exactly. Our mind is our body, and our body has a tremendous influence over our brain. And the channel is alive and well there. And many of you probably have heard of power posing. Certainly, most of you would know, qigong or yoga practices, walks in nature. Our ability to pay more attention to the subtle energies that are going on inside of us is a really powerful and liberating practice. On the high end, when I work with athletes that are playing in professional sports, it's important for them to be aware of, say, for example, nerves or tension or a racing heart or a dry mouth. Same kind of thing if you're giving a presentation or if you're working in a hospital. Knowing more about your own self, I think it's felt counterintuitive, like, oh, I don't want to pay attention to the stress or the tension inside of myself. That will only make it get bigger, right? Well, it actually turns out to be quite opposite, that the more attention that we give to different sensations within our body, the more information that we have, and the less power it really has to kind of take over the storyline. So deep embodiment is a really powerful thing, and it's something that you're going to be experiencing a lot throughout the course of this month.
Yeah, we definitely have a daily emotional checklist or check-in just to kind of recognize where you're feeling stuff. And again, the science and the research on that is fascinating. So immediate feedback.
Yeah, I mean, when we develop feedback loops that are more consistent and immediate in nature, it allows us to kind of stay in the flow state. And so, I know that in corporate, there used to be like, the yearly review. Well, it's turned out that that's like way too far in the future for somebody to really get anything out of that. So, I think the companies that are pushing this progressive envelope, the sports teams that are pushing this progressive envelope, they're giving immediate feedback and helping people to course correct in real time, which bumps right back up to autonomy. If you're getting immediate feedback and you can see that maybe I've tacked a little bit off course, then you drive your focus into the challenge of being able to kind of tack back in the direction you want to go. So the more we know, and you'll hear this from Scott and I a lot this month, what's the next best step? The next best step really drives us into thinking about, okay, where are we right now and how is it going? And when we can kind of assess that on the fly without kind of losing our cool or letting our nervous system get hijacked, we typically make the next best step in an autonomous way. So it's right. A lot of stacking of flow triggers here.
Well, that's also in pursuit of your goals, right? So again,
right.
It's that idea. It's like, what's taking me off my game? Am I being how I want to be in this pursuit? And that's where that feedback is so critical. So you start to see that stacking because now all of a sudden I have a way to kind of frame, am I getting closer or further away from that which I'm actually trying to pursue or attain? It's an interesting dynamic. And then the last one here.
So the challenge skills ratio is a really good one to end on, and we're going to build on it after this slide. But if you think about how to improve, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi worked with some scientists, and they developed an algorithm around what approximate percentage would be the perfect amount that stretches us, but we're not overwhelmed. It pushes us just enough, and we're not bored because it's not too easy. And it turned out it was around 4%. So I know that's sort of an arbitrary number, but if you just think about different areas in your life, how can I get about 4% better at that? And the way I like to think about it is like, if I reached up on my tiptoes and reached my hand up as high as it could go, what's just a little bit out of my reach? That might be within a relationship. That might be a goal that you had set, within your company. It might be, how you want to show up as a father or a mother. So it's your job to fill in the blank with that one. But there's a real distinct flow channel where it's the Goldilocks effect of it's not too anxiety provoking because it's too hard for us, too challenging, but it's also not so boring that, we're kind of stuck below that channel. So that 4%, we want to try to do our best to kind of get ourselves in that state. And for you, it could be posting a couple of things on the wall of wins. It could be adding a gratitude post that might feel a little vulnerable. Could be adding a high five to somebody else's post that you thought was really cool. So again, up to you to figure out exactly where that challenge skills fits in your own life. But just know that there is a ratio based on a lot of robust science, and a little bit out of your reach will really drive you into flow.
Yep. So we'll move into the challenge skills ratio in the next little episode. So we'll see you in a bit.